It's our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and any other market where we think we might be able to make some or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we've got a very special guest today. We've got the project lead from Sage and App, the chief degen of S3 Labs, Roy Lopez. Welcome to the stage with us, my friend. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, feeling good. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a big fan of you guys and the show, so stoked to be here.
Great to have you with us, man. Pretty excited to be debuting a new segment with you later. So that's going to be coming up in just a little bit. Legendary, how are you doing?
GM, you triggered some massive FOMO in me over the weekend, and I'm not sure if you're even aware of that. So what's been happening is I travel quite a lot. I bought a new microphone for the mobile setup,
Ooh.
USB driven Rode NT Plus, and I was super happy with that. Shared that with you because I think you use a smaller version of that, and I told you I
Yes.
always need to go pro if there's a pro version. And then we started to talk mics and talked about like one that supports basically one that's even more expensive and the best would work mobile and stationary in this setup as well. And you said, oh yeah, someone from the All In podcast is using that, and it's a microphone that shows status. And this sentence triggered me, and I'm actually thinking to return the other one, this guy as well, and upgrade to the status microphone, because I go for the pro stuff, but if you say there's something above that that is a microphone that indicates status, that's actually a feature that I need.
This is your interesting quirk and your downfall. This is your downfall. If I need you to make an expensive purchase when we're in Singapore and we're going to go for lunch, this is how I'm going to rope you into the finest restaurant, for example.
Yeah, but in all honesty, the microphone is still cheaper. The top tier Rode microphone is still cheaper than my AI enabled toothbrush.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's not an AI microphone, unfortunately, just yet.
Exactly.
Roy, we've been having a discussion on the show across multiple shows how everything is going AI in this like crazy way. Have you been infected by the AI bug? Do you want an AI watch, an AI TV, an AI toothbrush? Or are you holding the fort down for Team Human, leaving the AI to the side for the moment?
Dude, I'm kind of in the middle. I honestly probably don't use AI tools as much as I should,
Okay.
but I think they're pretty cool, and I should definitely tap in more. I don't know if I need an AI toothbrush quite yet, though. Good on that for now.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But look, we are, we're split. The team is split on the AI toothbrush, but we've got a lot bigger and more important things to talk about today. As always, we're going to get into the market headlines today. That looks something like the shape of the show. We'll be talking about Coinbase CEO saying AI, as we've just been mentioning, should have crypto wallets. We'll be discussing that. We'll be talking about the main CryptoPunk, huge alien sale at a huge loss, frankly. One's just moved hands for 1,500 ETH. And we'll be talking about how 60% of pump fund traders are losing money. We'll be getting into that in just a little bit. But just a reminder before we do, this show is not financial advice. This market is incredibly risky. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment at all times. Let's get into the price action. We have Bitcoin is down a couple of percent, almost 3% at 58K. We've got ETH down also a couple of percent at 2.5K. Solana down a couple of percent at $141. As we mentioned, in terms of the headlines, cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase recently launched an artificial intelligence accelerator grant program to award $3,000 to 5 projects focused on combining AI with crypto wallets. We'll dive into that a little bit more later. The iconic alien CryptoPunk sold for 1,500 ETH from Deepak, who bought it for 8,000 ETH 2 years ago. I know ETH is down a little bit, but that still sounds like a pretty significant loss. The new buyer is Vombatus. Vombatus. I don't know how to pronounce that. The handle is in the snapshot if you want to check out the new buyer, what they're doing, buying an alien CryptoPunk for $3.9 million. And then finally, 60% of pump fund traders are losing money. Only 3.5% are making $1,000 or more. That is a savage percentage success rate. There's a really good pie chart for the people who are watching in. Remember, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube as well. But we're going to be diving into that pie chart in a little bit more and discussing whether this pump fund meta, the meme coin meta, is kind of losing a bit of steam at the moment as we're kind of bang in the middle of the summer too, in the middle of August. Some notable sales from around the space. We have a CryptoPunk pink hair selling for 30 ETH. Matt Kane, the famous digital artist of Gazer fame, a different one of his pieces, Door number 8, sold for 15.1 ETH. That's pretty significant too. But so that's the price action legendary. Those are the headlines. Let's go to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, see what else is catching your attention on the NFT side.
Yeah, absolutely. First, a quick update on the NFT market per se. We got Bored Apes down a touch to 12.2 ETH floor, down 1.6%. Milady's down a similar amount at a 3.65 ETH floor price. Azuki's up a touch at 4.45 ETH. That's an increase of 2.3%. And Pudgy's are basically unmoved, sitting at a 9.14 ETH floor. However, if we are talking about things that are catching my attention, it's actually a different collection from the Pudgy ecosystem. It is the rods. The rods are up 34% over the last 24 hours. They have moved to a 22 ETH floor. And we also had this post that I'm sharing on screen by Luca Netz.
Ooh.
One of that reads, one of the greatest generative art pieces of our generation, Pudgy rods, with a GIF of a Pudgy rod. Didn't get too many views, actually. It's at 15K views. But it was posted like 16 hours ago, and we've seen quite an intense buying action. If we look on this activity chart over the last 5 and 6 hours, quite a few have been swept, including some at 0.3, some at 0.71 ETH. So there's been actually more than just a couple of sales that have moved the price on the Pudgy rods up.
Interesting. So what's going on here? Legendary, what are you thinking? Like, is this well, firstly, general question on the collection, is it actually generative? Like, are all of these rods different in any way? That's my first question. And then the second question is, well, second observation is, it's kind of fun to just see a tweet be able to do something to a price. I wonder if Luca is probably one of the only people now who's able to have a significant price impact on an NFT collection as things stands. Remember, in the last few months, doodles have been coming out, for example, with like banger announcement after banger announcement, and it just is not really moving the needle, although they've probably been trending up in terms of the asset prices themselves. What are you thinking here in terms of the price action?
To answer your first question, you can definitely see differences in the colors of the rods. And blue ones, you get gray ones, you get pinkish ones, wood-colored ones. So they're not all the same. And I assume that there's also difference in prices based on some of the trades. I do agree that probably Luca is one of the few people who now can move the prices, at least in a positive direction. We've seen it with Kenpai Pandas, how the founders can move the price in a very negative direction. Once we had that scandal around a specific meme coin where we had the allegations that the founders linked to that. But I don't think, so I very much agree. I don't think that it's the case like in 2021 where every founder or also bigger influencers could move the price massively. I remember the times when you had Farouk on Spaces and the Cool Cats, and he was sweeping Cool Cats on Space, and so did a couple of the listeners, and that was a very iconic space that pumped the price quite a bit. And I just don't think that the momentum is still there to do this for NFTs, even though we've been looking at greener days than a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Roy, I'm wondering, before we kind of consider what else is kind of catching our attention, do you have a thought on like the NFT action specifically, whether that's on the ETH side, whether that's anywhere else? Have you been playing around in that arena at all?
Not a ton. Yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of tweets on the timeline saying NFTs are so back.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen much evidence for that, other than like Frank starting a Telegram. Like D God's kind of had a run there for a little bit, but like I don't know. It's interesting. I gotta wonder if it's like coordinated. I don't know, like if the cabal is real, but I don't know if they're trying to pump NFTs or what. But yeah, not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I saw a few takes actually kind of calling it out in that perspective. Something like a lot of people are talking about NFTs being back, but I'm not seeing anyone actually buy them in any great capacity.
Right.
A lot of talk on the timeline, maybe hoping that it might be the case, but not a lot of action. Having said that, though, I would point out Bored Apes are back to 12.2 ETH, which is like, you know, I think they were down as low as maybe 8 or 9 for a period of time, which is pretty healthy action. And this, for the first time in a while, doesn't seem to be one of those ones where it's just like pumping up and then giving back the gain straight away. So that's an interesting observation. Another interesting observation from Cap in the comments. I think it's Luca and Gordon as the only two who can move price positively with a cryptic tweet at the moment. I think that's probably right, to be fair. Obviously, Luca Net's founder of Pudgy Penguins and Gordon Goner, founder of Bored Ape Yacht Club, but also, you know, not necessarily around as much at the moment due to some health issues. I think that is definitely fair. When Gordon gets the sweeping sweeping action out on the NFTs, people get pretty excited. So I think that's pretty fair. Aside from that, Legendary, is there anything catching your attention in the market more generally at the moment? Definitely feels like to me, I put this in our chat yesterday or Saturday. We feel like we're in a bit of a lull, like bang in the middle of August. I'm pretty big on timing, and I just think it's the middle of August. Not necessarily anything to worry about, but it does feel like we're in a bit of a lull. What's on your mind?
Yeah, there's two things. First of all, still attached to the NFT market, it is this ape that I'm sharing, ape number 2948, which appears to have sold 40 minutes ago for 0.12 ETH. So seems that there was a fat fingering going on with this ape. And in terms of the more general market, one thing that I've been thinking about is, I don't know if you've seen Clemente's post. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Where are you going to say that the thing we should do is just counter trade Clemente while we're like,
no, it was
yeah, go on. What?
It was actually he's on a holiday on vacation in Africa, in Kenya, I think, and he said how to make 400K in 7 days. Bet 100K on Yes Polymarket Monkey Tours in USA by August 31st. Fly to Kenya, do every single monkey tour plus extracurricular. Fly back to USA and test positive. Collect 400K. Use 50K for hospital fee. And actually, I mean, it's very funny, but some people point out in the comments. Actually, there was one person who did bet on the Super Bowl, where there's like someone who's going to run on the field, and that person himself did that. And someone else pointed out a more dangerous aspect of that, quote unquote. I mean, it sounds stupid, but let me explain. Decentralized warfare, in the sense, if you want to harm an economy, if you want to harm a country, create bets and fund them with massive volume that incentivizes people to do stuff like this, which, you know, Clemente is obviously jokingly speaking about.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly turn very, very dark.
Yes, that is interesting. It's like a interesting way to be able to not crowd fund, but like in a decentralized way. Yeah, in a decentralized way, crowd fund some type of potentially illicit or dangerous activity without you needing to go and, you know, find the person, shake hands, make a deal, because you're just like creating the incentive outside. Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that went pretty dark pretty quickly. Went from Bored Apes to decentralized warfare. I mean, I know that so zooming out a little bit, Legendary, are you saying that Polymarket and its effects and its things is just like one of the things you're thinking about more, how to play that game?
Yeah, look, I made the joking post that I said COVID would have been much more fun with Polymarket bets to do. That was done in a joking way, but I seriously think that we need guardrails for what can be created, and that there needs to be like there is an ethical dilemma happening at some point when you create those very well funded incentives for someone to take illegal, dangerous, harmful actions towards other people, like spreading an epidemic and making it a pandemic. That's definitely not something that should be publicly financially incentivized.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. Kusho, your hand is raised. Would love to throw to you here. What is your thought on the kind of darker aspects of the prediction markets, which haven't necessarily played out just yet, but I guess is not too hard to imagine?
I think conceptualizing the dark side of a prediction market is crazy. That is wild. I mean, at one point you sit down and think, yeah, this is how prediction markets could go wrong. But what I will say is,
Speak just a little bit
when you
louder,
think
please,
about,
Kusho. I know it's early for you over there. You might have to speak a bit louder.
I bet. So I think when you say implement guardrails for prediction markets, what you might end up doing, since most of them are decentralized anyways, is you might end up creating a backdoor, a black market for these types of bets, to where poly market is a very public use case of prediction markets. And you might then see more underground use cases coming into play with more darker type, bets. I think that's just what I want to say about that.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Yeah, the emergence of some type of dark market. I haven't really given much thought to this, but I think I'll definitely have to think about it more before I'm able to comment on it like in more detail. But it's an interesting idea, and I definitely can see the perverse incentive where, like, instead of saying that you want to fund X bad thing happening, you just put up a prediction market which is betting on the bad thing happening, and then you you fund it in some way in that respect. But I need to think about that a lot more. Interesting perspective, Legendary. And I know that you are kind of looking at poly market in general as, I guess this one of this categories, this cycle's category leaders in terms of kind of crypto protocols. So that is very interesting. Roy, coming to you here, what are you focused on at the moment? How are you looking at the market? Is there anything in particular catching your attention as we hit like the middle of August?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I'm pretty much balls deep into Say. And
Yeah,
so that's giving me a lot of opportunities. And so, I'm pretty focused on that. But one thing or one category, I guess, that is interesting and I need to learn more about is RWAs. I hear a lot of people talking about them, and I'm not, very in tune with what's going on that front. So that would be my focus. But uh
love it.
don't look to me for any NFA or financial advice or anything when it comes to that.
One thing you might be able to speak to though, Roy, because I've been speaking to some Say people as well. Obviously, today's segment is going to be brought to our audience by Say. Like I was having some kind of around the house conversations about like the kind of things that Say is looking to push. Am I right in thinking that there's increasingly more DeFi protocols that like trying to like incentivize liquidity and trying to get people active in that respect? Maybe at first it was more about the cultural stuff, and now that those DeFi protocols are more ready for participation.
Yeah, I mean, I think Say really was always built for DeFi and trading. And what happened, in the past was a bunch of NFTs got minted and brought a whole bunch of people over, and so
Sure.
they just kind of leaned into that. But yeah, there's a ton of incentives going on Say right now as far as participating in DeFi protocols, and it's been hinted at but not confirmed that when Say does their third airdrop, it'll be to people who participate. So obviously NFA DYOR, but
Got it. I like it. Given that I'm in a bit of a lull, it was kind of on my list of things to take a look at because I just feel like it's in a bit of a lull. Legendary. What's your comment on this? Like, we were quite big for a long period of time. This is more like a zoomed out perspective moment here, where we talked about restaking a lot before EtherFi, before Eigenlayer, or like during those things as they were getting big. They've all been very profitable as part of the airdrops that have happened. They've then had second airdrops, and whilst not being as fantastic or brilliant or wonderful as the first ones, EtherFi is still great. Eigenlayer, in fact, Eigenlayers will probably become tradable in about 1 month's time. Remember, you could do your claim, and then they're non-tradable, and they're going to become tradable, I think, in middle of September. And I think that will also be relatively good. But now it's a little bit like, where do we go from here, Legendary? Like, are you mostly in stables? Are you lending? Are you are you still restaking? What's your kind of perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like the lull from the perspective that it's not as prominent on the timeline what to do. There's not the entire timeline telling you to farm
Sure.
that hole, which is typically that
Which is
time.
what happened with Blast, for example, right? There was just like months and months of Blast, crazy heavy content, and yeah, now it's over.
Exactly. And I feel like feels like pre EtherFi season one where nobody on the timeline was really talking about that. And then the airdrop hit pretty big. And then season 2, everyone was talking about that and was still a good airdrop, but way less than the first one. And I like this sentiment on the timeline because I feel like everyone's still obsessing over meme coins and obviously the presidentials in the United States. In terms of what I'm doing, I have allocated more than I typically do into stables. Some of them are still working on Blast. The rest is lending and experimenting. Still a bit of NFT lending, more based on USDC rather than ETH because I feel like this is the more stable option for me at the moment. And in terms of additional things that I'm looking at, it still would be Hyperliquid and then Hyperlend once we have that live. So there's protocols to be excited for. And I quite like that they are not mentioned very prominently on the timeline. Then the question to me becomes, I'm tracking Polymarket, I'm tracking the prediction markets pretty closely and also participate in them with substantial capital. What other alternatives will we see to Polymarket? Will there be a token? Will there be new features? Because I feel like Polymarket gets a lot of talk from the perspective of using the protocol, from mainstream media, from an onboarding perspective, but nobody really talks about the potential token plays in the prediction market category, because like risk taking is a category, RWA is a category, and I do think that we might be able to see multiple tokens come from that. We had a long conversation about that on Friday's show where you were traveling, where we spoke about Semi's thread, who was kind of outlining the future of prediction markets. And one point we didn't get to touch too much onto was the liquidity part. On Polymarket, you have an order book. On other prediction markets, you would have more an AMM style liquidity matching. Which platforms will do that? Will you be able to collateralize the bets as NFTs and lend against them? So I do think that this can turn like into a full ecosystem that allows for multiple plays. And this is definitely where I have a good amount of my attention on.
I think that's reasonable. I think one of the things that I'm conscious of, and I think a lot of people learned the challenging lesson last time, was that if you want to go for the category leader, you should go with the right expectations, because everyone else is placing huge bets. And if you're going to farm that thing, you better be going with like huge amounts in order to get something back, because the amount of volume being done is huge. And if your proportion of volume is big for you personally and not big for the protocol, then you're going to be very disappointed. And it's a bad risk reward thing. So I don't think it's as easy to say Polymarket is a great thing to participate purely from an airdrop perspective. I think it's interesting to participate in as a general protocol, because I think it's a clear use case for crypto and a use case for prediction markets. But from the airdrop perspective, I'd be cautious of participating too much when you are ultimately still placing a bet, which you then might lose. And then if your volume is not high enough, your airdrop will not cover the costs necessarily. So I would definitely be conscious of that too. In terms of the other stuff, one of the things that I was thinking was, what was I thinking? I can't remember. Any final thoughts, Legendary, before we keep it moving?
Nothing to add. We still have a lot to cover on the show.
Exactly. Right. We've got a lot of important headlines to come up, which we're going to discuss. But before we do that, we are premiering our new segment for today. In this week's segment of What Are They Saying?, we hit the main quotes and trending ideas from the weekend to get some hot takes. This segment is brought to you by the Say Network, a superfast L1 parallelizing the EVM. They are offering a $250,000 matching pool to support creators contributing to Say with IRL video content, podcast hosting, and video animations and storytelling. Quote number 1 from Zero Hedge regarding historical September equity performance. They said, if July is a great month for the NASDAQ, September is not. Your question, guys, is this: 8 out of the last 10 years of the NASDAQ have seen red Septembers. Is September 2024 going to be red or green? One word answers. Legendary.
Red.
Roy.
Green.
Oh, going against the grain. Quote number 2 from Crypto Kermit regarding pump fund traders. 60% lost money, 4.7% made no money, 24% made less than $100, 11.2% made more than $100, 3% made more than $1,000, and only 0.5% made more than $10,000. Your question, is pump fund killing the bull market? Yes or no, Roy?
Oh, that's hard. There's an argument to be made there.
Which way are you leaning?
No.
Pump fund is not killing the bull market. Legendary, what do you think?
A very strong no. It's not killing the bull market.
I'm actually going to say yes. I think it is killing the bull market. That is my hot take. Quote number 3 from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong regarding crypto's destiny. He said this, which was very interesting. Crypto's destiny is to help create physical territories, special economic zones in the world where freedom is preserved. This process has already begun. The question for you guys is, do you think crypto and crypto participants need to operate in separate areas away from legacy nations, states, and institutions? Legendary first this time, yes or no?
Yes, but I do think that every existing government hates that idea.
Roy, what are you thinking here?
I want to say no. I don't want it to be that way.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. And final quote from the weekend from Say community lead Austin regarding Say's 250K creator fund, sponsor of this segment. Number 1, the Say community fund is focused on creative media and IP development. The total applications ended up being 170. There were 120 accepted, 50 were rejected. Questions on this is, after multiple projects received up to $10,000 to $25,000 in matched funding in the first round, which 2 projects are you excited to vote for this second time round? Roy, you're our resident Say expert. What are you looking at?
I'm excited to vote for Your Labs and Crossover Studios. Those 2, I think, can really move the needle and do some cool stuff.
What's particularly cool that they're doing?
Crossover makes a lot of cool content. They do like animations, and it's something that I haven't really seen in all of Web3, and they're bringing it to Say, which is pretty unique. So I think there's a lot of room for them to cook there. And then Your Labs is, they just understand culture and have really held the culture together on Say so far. So yeah.
Awesome. Very good stuff. Legendary, you've picked a couple of more diverse selections. What did you go for?
Absolutely. First one I picked is Say Africa community building. I think African community is very important in this space, often overlooked, but the African and the Turkish communities tend to be one of the loudest and most, I see a crucial, very much tend to be one of the most vocal ones. And we tend to overlook them because we're like so US centric, and then we are simping for Asia. Then there's Europe, and Africa is almost never talked about. Second one is, and it kind of connects with the discussion that we had earlier on the importance on DeFi, because DeFi is where the money is, and it's Castle Capital. DeFi enthusiasts, researchers, analysts, builders, investors, traders want to provide educational content around DeFi on Say. And I do think that this is a flywheel into growing any blockchain, really.
Love it. As you said, very diverse sets of things available. 2 things I'm looking at. I'm looking at S3 Labs. Obviously, Roy is from S3 Labs. It was awesome at onboarding me into the Say community, or giving me the lowdown on what was going on, along with my guy, Dog Wiz, who's involved in Cabal Ventures. So I'm looking at those 2. I'm also looking at a whole host of other ones as well, as I kind of get to know the ecosystem a little bit better. But one of the interesting aspects of the Creator Fund, Roy, is this. Well, one of the more complicated aspects and interesting aspects is that it's done by quadratic funding. So it's not just like you make an application and the community or the team give you X amount of money. It's done by quadratic funding on Gitcoin. So do you want to just explain and break down what that means and how it works?
Yeah, sure. Quadratic funding is quite confusing, and it's kind of even hard for me to explain. But like as you said, there's a matching pool, and that matching pool will be matched based on quadratic funding. And basically, that means that the more wallets that vote for a project is more important than the total dollars raised. So you could have if you sort on the stats by total contributions, that's probably going to give you a more accurate picture of how much will be matched by the foundation, rather than sorting by total USD raised. And so that's pretty much the load down. I will say that Gitcoin does provide some resources. There's a YouTube video, or there's actually a couple that explain it probably a little bit more in depth than I just did. And they have a tool where you can kind of play with numbers and input different things and see how it works. So
That's really, really helpful. So I think my understanding is it's not about like the dollar amount. It's not like one person can come in and donate loads and then just take all of the funding. It's more about trying to source, broad support across the community. And also my understanding was, Roy, I think you told me this, that if that wallet is also supporting multiple people, it kind of shows it almost has an additional value. Is that fair to say?
yeah, if a wallet votes for multiple projects, their votes will be weighted heavier when it comes to considering how much will be matched.
Interesting. That's like really, really fascinating on how like voting and governance and funding is moving forward in this space, trying to innovate on what is like a fairly complicated thing to be able to allocate. Legendary, I know you have played around in this space a little bit. Any final reflections on this funding model?
My quadratic funding has been around for a while. As Roy said, it's pretty complex. I think um, the like we often let's maybe take this step back. Like we often, when it comes to DAOs, for example, speak about how to design incentive structures and how to weigh on the one fact that you have a lot of capital, which is important. You have the whales who are important, and then you have like the larger community user base, which obviously is also equally important. And I feel like there's often a tension between the two of those, because in some voting processes, it's just the money that matters. Others are like shaped inversely, and capital doesn't matter, but the individual votes do. In and then they don't stand in a relationship with the capital. And I feel like the quadratic funding is kind of trying to find a balance between the two of those, which I've always been a fan of, really.
Yeah, I think it's definitely pretty interesting. Just some headline numbers for people who are interested from the first round of the Say Creator Fund team. Like there were multiple teams that received in excess of $10,000. 3 teams that received more than $20,000. Maybe 6 or 7 between 10 to 20. Then like loads of teams between 5 and 10. So maybe there'll be more competition this time round. We'll see how the numbers kind of shake out, but it's an interesting way to go about this stuff for people to find ways to fund like creative communities amongst themselves. So we'll keep monitoring that. That was our segment for today. What were they saying? Hope that was interesting. Getting some hot takes. Legendary, after my questions on the hot takes, you've got any cool takes? I think there was some that you wanted to maybe give some more time to, but you didn't get a chance because you had to answer in one word.
Definitely the last question before we went into the individual proposals on nation states, and whether basically crypto should establish a parallel structure to our existing society, or at least have like a safe havens where they can play in. And I do think this is already happening to some extent. Maybe it's not detached from nation states, but it's already the case that you see an exodus of people going to Dubai from our space. It's already the case that you see legislations like Hong Kong and some countries in the Middle East who try to work closer together on cross-border transactions that are crypto facilitated. And then you obviously also have the other side of that. You have the EU coming forward with the markets in crypto assets regulation, which is building a tighter framework, which some are liking, which some are using to basically relocate in other jurisdictions. And it feels like even though we're getting closer to having basically a handle on crypto regulations, we are still at this point where we create like a lot of confusion in the market. I think one of the headlines we only spoke like really shortly about, and especially not in this like conjunction, was on the one hand Circle with USDC, where they, I think, initially wanted to headquarter in France. I think they might have changed that. But anyhow, they are doing everything to be MiCA compliant, which also includes having 60% of the cash reserves with European banks. And you have Tether, who's not at the point yet, and might struggle with that, which can also help to create more competition in the stable markets, which is something that's positive. But to me, the big negative one is that we just don't have a like regulatory global framework, which is obviously impossible to have. And this is why I think that having like some kind of safe havens that allow you to experiment a bit in a more freely and maybe government detached form could be helpful to move this space forward.
That's fascinating. That's really, really interesting. On this point, I really like the point that you made on how it's not necessarily the case that it's going to start detaching itself from the traditional institutions and media and nations, that it's already happening. And maybe I hadn't reflected on it enough, but if you see in the snapshot, one of the other pieces of news today was Balaji's announcement of the network school. I'm just going to share this screen as well, so people can kind of get a handle on what this is. This network school is going to be, obviously, for people who don't know, Balaji's former Coinbase, very significant investor, thinker, founder in both the crypto sphere, but also previously from Web2. He said, "We're starting a new school near Singapore for the dark talent of the world." And it's like kind of like a decentralized pop-up school where it's like, look, the traditional avenues to success and education and kind of prominence are not applicable for this particular world. There's too many people who are either lost and cannot access it. There's too many people who cannot afford it and therefore cannot access it. There needs to be some type of alternative ways for people to come together, who are, congregate around a common cause, a common perspective, a common desire, and try to succeed. And this is like I just saw this yesterday. It's like a 90-day pop-up that runs from September the 23rd to December the 23rd, right after the Network State Conference. So legendary. We will be in Singapore, I think, at least in one of these days. Rent is $1,000 a month with roommates, or $2,000 a month solo. And they're going to be running a school there. He said, "I've always wanted to expand the equality of opportunity around the world, because my father was born in a desperately poor country, but with the right opportunity, he was able to make something of himself. Like dark matter, he was dark talent. And for more than a decade, I've been thinking about how to give others who are similarly situated the chance to make something of themselves. That is, I've been thinking about how to empower the dark talent of the world." He kind of goes on to say the universities are fading, they're too expensive. And actually, I think they're losing some of the luster that they used to have anyway. And so many jobs, people are realizing that they are not necessarily even utilizing 50% of what they're learning in these previous institutions, and it's far more helpful to have people with practical experience, who are kind of attacking the world in a more practical way rather than an academic way. Andrew, any reflections on this? I thought this kind of perfectly fit into your idea that, look, these kind of siloed pop-ups, separate institutions are kind of popping up and disappearing and moving around. Any thoughts on this? Had you seen this?
Yeah, I have seen it. And actually, I think the location of that is pretty interesting. Let me share this screen. It says it's near Singapore on the X post.
Yeah.
If you go to the community notes, you will find out that it's scroll down, it's quite a long post. Well, you will find out it's based in a ghost town in Malaysia called Johor, and it's the BBC had an article on that. It's actually pretty interesting read from last December that calls it "The Forest City Inside Malaysia's Chinese-Built Ghost City." And you see this picture of, I would say, 24 skyscrapers.
Wow.
In a very eerily quiet and remote location that doesn't show any sign of humans being around there. So much about like parallel government detached structures where this could be happening. I thought that fit perfectly well.
Dude, that's so funny. Look, keep that picture up for a second, then I'll share my screen of the picture they put on the website, which is like also similar skyscrapers, but not the same. That is like a pretty drastic difference of skyscrapers and thing. But look, I don't know. Maybe this is good. Maybe it's frankly good, because I guess the point is that you are able to pop up these digital first institutions that are just going to take over a physical location for a bit. And if anything, if it was actually a built up, thriving location, you wouldn't be able to design it all in the way that you want, because there'd be too much built up infrastructure there and it would get in your way. So I wonder if this is actually more helpful to fill these types of spaces. But we want to get into a couple of the other headlines, some important stuff on Pump Fun and some other points too. But we've got a couple of hands raised. Let's hear from them. Funky, your hand is raised, and Kusho, yours is too. Let's go to Funky. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are you thinking on this kind of separation of either education, crypto, certain institutions from the traditional ones?
GM fam. Yeah, I just, as a former educator of 20 years, I really love this idea. I did not know about it until you had brought it up on the snapshot. And one of the things that I've said, and I'm obviously striving toward here in Florida, is just getting people to wrap their head around the fact that we are using an educational model that is rooted in the 19th century for 20th century jobs. You know, if you are remotely autodidactic, there's no need for you to go to college. You can probably learn far more watching YouTube, networking with people. I've met some teenagers, for instance, like last year. You know, this kid was a founder. He basically quit school in Italy. He was already a consultant making thousands of dollars a month just because he knew what the market needed and he found that PMF and just went for it. And so I think that there's something to be said about giving kids skills and education that is really future facing and forward thinking, whether that's blockchain, whether that's AI. That's incredible. So, you know, just hats off to Balaji for doing something like this.
I like it. I think that's a really, really strong point. As you say, YouTube, I still don't think we've got our head around how impactful YouTube is. Like, I know certain people get it and I know people use it all the time. And I saw some statistics the other day that it's actually overtaken Netflix as the kind of video streaming platform of choice for people who are watching TVs. Like, people are using YouTube more as the centralized kind of TV channel. But like, it's just so damn important. And us personally, I'm focusing a huge amount of time on YouTube at the moment. Kusho, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts on this, my friend? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think this conversation is something that's already happening in Africa, and it's something that is harder to do in the developed parts of the world because there's so much structure around these institutions.
Mm,
A good example of this would be, I want everybody to really check this out, is Old School Africa. And what they basically do is they teach people on-demand tech skills. That's front-end development, back-end development, full-stack development, technical writing, product marketing, and some other tech-focused courses. And the way they do this is there is no school. Like, there's really no school. There's an office, and then the entire program happens online. The real life impact of this has been that there's been a lot, and I mean hundreds of African youths across the continent getting international in demand jobs with big tech companies, small tech companies, medium sized techno companies, and some of them even starting their own companies, right? And it really does work. This is a model that does work, especially when you have countries where education does not mean as much.
yeah.
Funky says this all the time. US is using the 19th century educational model in the 20th century, but this has been true for Africa for the longest time, right?
Yeah.
Education has been mostly irrelevant because many of the times when you go to school to study a particular course, you don't really end up using that. For example, I studied biology education, meaning I am qualified to be a teacher. I do know a little bit about biology, but I don't use that, right? So now I have this alternative school, old school, and I can go there, decide that I want to learn product marketing and decide to use that in a real life company. It's going to work even if I don't have that prerequisite knowledge from a university background because I do have the real life, real time skill to be able to contribute value to some of these companies. And this is something that you would want to see in a more or less dedicated environment for crypto. If we're going to have something like that, it is very important that the institutions themselves also take a decentralized or kind of like a different approach to the way typical institutions do them.
Mm. Yeah, thanks so much for the African perspective, man. That's really, really interesting to find out. One of the interesting things about the network school, you mentioned like the way you mentioned that there's basically no school. It's like, I don't know, some either internet component or something else. But the way that they're running it at this school is that there's no classes. There's just a daily problem or something like that. And you just drop in at whatever part of the time of the day that suits you best, and then you understand what the problem is. You can sit there and discuss it with people if you want, if they're just around at the time and you want to do it there and then. You can leave, you can do it whenever you want. And I think that's what you mean, right? It's like this flexibility of being able to do things just a bit in a bit less of a rigid, like almost factory style output of content or work is the way that we're going to kind of move into the future. But that's really, really interesting. We've got to get into I don't know if you had more to say on that, Kusho, but we've got to move into the snapshot and touch on the final headlines. I think it's a pretty important discussion too, but definitely appreciate your thoughts, bringing that insight from how things are playing out in Africa. Let's hit the Web3 roundup to get everyone up to speed with what else has been happening in the space. And then I think we'll go to the pump fun trading statistics and where we are with meme coins, because it's a pretty shocking stats, to be completely honest with you. From the Web3 roundup, number one, Polymarket daily active users hit an all-time high at 8,000, which was pretty impressive. Number two, the total stablecoin market is now less than $1 billion from its all-time high, excluding algorithmic stablecoins. Remember, a while ago, we talked a lot about what is the bet that we need to make. If you think that there will be more stablecoins in the future, how can you place a bet on that? Because that number does seem to be rising. To be honest, maybe there should be a Polymarket bet on it. Next, 94% of total Bitcoin supply has been officially issued. I did not know that so much of it had already been done, but that was reported by Bitcoin Magazine. Next, Katizen minigame on Ton reports daily active users of 3.5 million, with global users over 29 million, after less than 50 days, less than 150 days after launch. I have seen some skepticism about the Telegram numbers. I was skeptical a while ago on all of the numbers. I'm seeing that increasingly voiced on the timeline for the first time. Some of them are just outrageous. We'll have to keep monitoring that to see if we can prove those. As we mentioned already, in some more news, Balaji announces network school in Singapore to open in September for 3 months, kind of pop-up 3-month internet school. And then finally, Brainlet moves back up 28%, hitting $20 million after Beeple includes the meme in his latest piece. That is the Web3 roundup from the snapshot. We've got 8 minutes left of the show today, and I think the headline we probably want to go to is the 60% of pump fund traders losing money, only 3.5% making $1,000 or more. I want to go to Roy first on this. Roy, I think you've been playing around a little bit in this space. What's your perspective on where we are with meme coins?
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone in being not profitable on Pump Fund. That's for sure.
Were you surprised by these statistics, though?
I wouldn't say I was like surprised, I guess, but it is kind of like, oh crap, like when you see them, it's a little alarming. But yeah, I don't know. I think meme coins are interesting to me because, and really, it's more surrounding the way people talk about them. Like,
Sure.
there's a lot of similarities, like the meme coin maxis, or everyone's that's like meme coins are the meta this cycle or whatever. There's a lot of similarities in the way they talk about meme coins to how people talked about NFTs in 2021. And now those
100%.
people are saying, oh, NFTs are dead. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know that there's much sustainability with meme coins, and it is kind of frustrating and a little bit of a distraction. But hey, if you have an opportunity to make 100x, we're degens, so we like to gamble, right?
I think that's exactly correct. There was this day the other day when I went for dinner with a friend who's like more into the meme coin side of things, and I was expressing how my timeline had kind of got taken over by very like negative energy, and he was like, no, what's happened is that you're still following NFT people. You need to follow some meme coin people. So I followed some of those people, and he was right. Like, I woke up the next day, it was like all positivity, all optimism. But as you say, the more I read those takes, the more it reminded me of 2021 and just the perspectives of how these, some type of super cycle vibe where these things are all in unison going to completely obliterate every meme coin ceiling that has come before them. So I think I've been coming to the same types of conclusions that you've been coming to. Legendary, what's your take on these statistics? I don't know if you want to pick any of them out in particular, and just your general thoughts on the meme coin vibe and pump fun.
Yeah, if 0.5% made more than 10K, and just the original post by Adam had some more statistics on that. Let me share that real quick. If you made over 100K, you're in the top 924. If
you're not sharing that post, by the way, you're sharing the snapshot. I don't know if you wanted to be sharing the other one.
Yeah,
you're sharing the wrong screen.
The other one. Yeah, give me 1 sec for that.
That's all right.
So yeah, I'm just gonna read it out because I can't figure it out in 1 second.
Sure, no problem.
If you made over $1 million trading pump fund tokens, you're a top 70 trader. And basically, whenever I check my feed, I see 5 to 6 new millionaires who claim to have made more than $1 million whatever meme coin trade. And it's,
Yeah.
you know how often like people tend to lie to use the copy pasta on those kinds of posts, but it still creates a specific kind of energy. If you scroll through the timeline and all you see is back to back people claiming to make substantial to life changing gains in meme coins, even if you don't believe that everyone's telling or sharing the truth on that, you still get that feeling of FOMO that everyone's making money, but you're not. And even though I think most of us, like on an instinctive level, are aware that A, not all info is correct, and B, that the majority of people has to be losing money for the rest to make money, it's still good to see this like reflected in the pie chart that serves as a very healthy reality check compared to the NFT season. And I feel like this is I'm in an NFT bubble as well. So obviously I do see the sentiment on the timeline as well. There's been many voices, and I tend to agree with them, having participated in both like things, that NFTs or the NFT trading tended to be a bit less insider heavy than the meme coin trading. And obviously still the majority of NFT traders, there were statistics on that as well. And we talked through them, has also lost money on that. And if they hadn't lost money back then, they certainly have now, with the prices at the current level. But it still seemed to be a less rigged game than what we see with meme coins. But obviously I could completely be biased on that.
Interesting. I've got some thoughts on that I'm kind of coming up with live, but Roy, I know you want to come back in on this.
Yeah, there's just another aspect here, right? Like when you see influencers, talking about meme coins, it's a lot easier for a meme coin project to give them an allocation of the meme coin and be like, "Hey, can you
Yeah.
bulldoze for us?" Rather than like with NFTs, it's like, what are you going to get? Like a free mint, and then like they're not as liquid, and so like I don't know. That's just another aspect that I don't think I brought up that could be part of this.
Yeah, so like the practical element of distribution, the idea of getting like 10,000 random coins is something, maybe it's just like a bit nicer about that than getting like one NFT from this liquid project. So I can see what you mean there. This is the point I was going to go to. I've got a feeling, I don't know if this is right. I'm thinking about this out loud. I think this is the way, I'm just don't want to be overly harsh to people. Isn't this the way it's supposed to be? Like when it comes to like markets, most people who trade lose money. Like, what do people expect in this? Did you want to see a thing where 70% of people all made $10,000 or more? Like, what was the expectation when you're looking at this chart? I think you could take that chart where it says pie chart of pump.fun traders. I think you can cross out pump.fun. You can put in crypto, you can put in NFTs, you can put in art, like real life art. I don't know. I feel like you can put in any speculative asset, and most people only buy when everyone else has already bought and they've got enough confirmation and they're going to get wrecked, or they're speculating on like the second, third, or fourth or fifth iteration of the thing that was actually successful, and all those things go to zero anyway. So I don't know if this should be a surprising chart. Legendary. Am I losing the plot here?
You're not. I looked at a study by Oxford University to see that for active stock traders, and the figure there is that 55% of people lost money on that. So it's pretty similar. Obviously, there might be distinctions in the percentages of how many people have made how much money, but overall, I don't think that 60% losing money. It's like very similar to CFD statistics, so contracts for difference. It's probably way better than day trading, because I think with day traders, there's obviously a lot of statistics, but there's one, like I think the broad range that you find with day trading is that 1 to 20% make money over a span that's longer than a year. So I agree with you. It's not a shocking statistic. It's to be expected that the majority loses money so others can win more.
Yeah, look, I think that's just one of my key reflections. I think, well, my reflection on other people's reflections is that, I don't know, this is anti-democratic, it's anti this, it's anti that. I just think ultimately that I think two things. One, first of all, you're always responsible for the buttons you click. So it's not their fault that you keep losing money. It's definitely your own fault. But the second thing I think, which is bigger than that, is this is how the segments of society always gets split up when it comes to success. You'll have a small group who are the top whatever percent. Maybe they're insiders, maybe they're not. However, which way they got to being that top 1% or top 0.1%, there is like it's almost like a science to it. It's like a physics to it. You're going to have a broad sway of the people who are losing. You're going to have this middle class that are like getting by and doing okay and trying hard, but not quite making it. You'll have someone a bit above that, and then you'll have this small sliver at the top. So I think that's an important reflection from my part. And maybe that'll be helpful to people who I think probably read those initial kind of statistics and thought, I don't know what people thought, but I think people were kind of shocked by it, whereas I'm in some ways not shocked. But look, that seems like a nice place to leave it for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Really fascinating discussions on a variety of things. As always, thank you so much to my legendary co-host, Legendary. Thank you to our special guest, Roy Lopez, project lead at Sage and App, chief degen at S3 Labs. Remember, there is the Say Creator Fund Round 2 going on right now. As part of my experiment and voting, I just put a vote in for Roy's team, S3 Labs. Going to share it on the screen here in just a second. There it is, S3 Labs. Roy, thanks so much for joining us, man. How can we keep in touch with what you and S3 Labs are doing? Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for the donation as well. Yeah, if you want to tap in, I would just recommend joining our Discord server. I know Discord's kind of a thing of the past, but if you want to interact with the Say community and see what's up, what's going on, S3 Labs is definitely where you want to be. So we have a lot of fun in there. So yeah.
Sounds good, man. I'm in there. Appreciate you. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you to everyone else for joining as well. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back as usual on Twitter, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. BST tomorrow. See you then. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.